Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Learn From Us podcast. We are here today in, where are we again? Brecksville, Richfield. How do I still not know?
I know.
I know why I don't know is because I live in Columbus, and as I talked on other podcasts, I have to slumber with Paul the night before. So, yeah, we're here. Paul is here. Paul, say hello.
Hello.
And it's a very odd thing. We have a guest today, and we're super stoked about it. This is John Dyer. Are you the owner of Nova? Or
I am an owner. I do have a partner.
Great. John owns Nova Title Agency.
Great. Stop talking. I'm going to keep going.
I know a lot about you. We met about 5 minutes ago. But we're super stoked. Paul and I have been trying to get more guests on here. It's just no one's been as interested in coming in. But John, however, found his niche is that he wants to podcast with us. So, John, welcome to the podcast. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. I feel like I know you, Seth.
You said this a few minutes ago, and I'd like to bask in the glory of you telling me why you feel that way. So tell us.
So I'm a fan of the podcast. I'm a regular listener. I did a weird thing where I started, like, at some point I was in the 40s and I went backward. So certain things kind of came to light, like the deal of the week catchphrase and this and that. So like, I know about your kids. I know your father-in-law.
Really?
He flips houses.
Can you believe this, Tim?
All these nuanced things about you, so I feel like I know you.
Well, I'm dying to learn more about you today, and so Paul, tell me about John and everything you know about him.
I think
a while.
Yeah, I think John. So John and I are. I consider him a friend. I like him a lot, which is a very rare thing. I think John would agree with that. I don't like many people, especially in the business world. John and I met 10 years ago.
I think it was like 12 years ago. I think it was 06 or 07. I could figure it out because I remember the transaction.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you were in the Benihana building.
We were in the Benihana building. I was with Competitive Title at the time.
Oh, is that what it was?
Which is a title agency that I founded in 2000. And
I don't know how the two of you say Benihana without not laughing. Didn't you see Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah.
Did you see Wolf of Wall Street?
I did.
That's like what took him down. He's just like, fucking Benihana. Anyway, keep going, guys. I interrupted. Go ahead.
Well, that's the Benihana story. It's weird. The guy was like a billionaire. He did some stock fraud.
Oh,
He ended
yeah.
up in jail. It's a bizarre thing.
Yeah, anyway, keep going. I cut you guys off. Go.
So we met, and the mutual love we had for each other and admiration was our both. I don't know how it came up, but I said something about Michigan, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I love Michigan," or something. I was like, "What? We're in Cleveland, Ohio, and somebody else loves Michigan?"
So what I remember is, we had this transaction, and so these guys are coming in, they're either buying or selling. I think you were selling this property.
Yeah.
And you and Andrew came in, and you were both wearing, for some reason, I remember this like pastel polo shirts.
Were we?
Yeah, and the guy...
Dumb and Dumber outfits, they have those they wear out. Keep going.
So the guy who was my client, who was the buyer from you guys, he said, yeah, this guy, he like owns part of the Miami Heat or something.
Oh.
He had this like weird story. I'm like, well, doesn't Mickey Arison own him? He owns a cruise line. Like I knew a little bit about it. And then so that was a closing that I would want to do. So at a title company, we work with people who are buying, selling, and refinancing real estate. And so I end up meeting with a lot of people. So I've probably done 7,000 to 10,000 closings in my
Holy F.
20-some year career. So, which is something I'm proud about. I don't do it as much anymore. But at the time I did it a lot, especially when somebody, came in that was somebody that we could potentially, have a relationship with. And so Paul and Andrew came in, and like with most closings, you do the paperwork and you just, you start developing a little bit of a rapport. So we just started bullshitting, and I know more about Michigan football in the 70s than probably any subject on earth, because my dad went to Michigan. I have 4 sisters. 3 of them went to Michigan. 3 of them graduated from Michigan. So I know a ton about Michigan sports. And so we started talking about Michigan football. And now Paul's younger than me by quite a bit. So I'm 54, you're 37, 38. So like he knew more about the current stuff. I knew more of the old. So we kind of talked about it a little bit. And so
I remember him first telling me how he cried once when Michigan lost, and he looked at his father and said, "That's not supposed to happen."
Oh, I can tell you when it was. It was 1976, and Michigan lost to Purdue.
That's right. You did say that.
At Ross-Ade Stadium in West Lafayette, Indiana. And I actually have a guy that's a mortgage guy that played in that game.
You did say that.
And so there's certain things that you don't forget. And so as an example, just so people, you guys are younger, when I was a kid, there was one Michigan football game on a year. There was one football game on every week. On
that's
Saturday
right.
on ABC. Every game wasn't on TV
every
every time. So it's a different idea. And so you'd have to listen to the game, or you'd catch, and we'd listen to it on WJR out
You
of
say
Detroit.
54 years old?
54, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just to give some context. So there's lots of things that I remember that, somebody today wouldn't know about, just like, our kids do things. Like my son, I have 3 kids, my son knows a ton about the NBA, never picks up a sports page. It's all off Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah.
Of
It's
course.
crazy to me, because I'm,
54.
I'm looking at the sports page. So anyway,
So, Paul, tell me this. I wanted you to introduce John, but tell me why you wanted John on the podcast. What do you love about him? Why is he here?
Well, he called me and asked to be on the podcast.
Oh, that's a great answer. Okay, moving on.
So when I first started doing real estate, I don't think I ever cared about who the title agent was, ever. I mean, it was just a title agent. I'm like, okay, these people are, basically glorified real estate agents.
okay, wrong.
So, exactly, wrong.
That's one.
So
Well, I must ask then, you're huge fans of real estate agents,
Yeah, I love 'em.
brokers,
Yeah, I love 'em.
bankers.
They're the best.
Where does John fall in this hierarchy?
obviously John is a title agent who's a lawyer. And can you be a title owner if you're not a lawyer?
So to be a licensed title agent in the state of Ohio, you have to be licensed. You do not have to be an attorney. Most title agents that people are going to deal with will have an attorney either on staff or available to them, because there are a great number of legal documents that we need to prepare
course.
in any closing, and we have to make legal decisions every single day.
So all of a sudden it's like insurance. Well, it is insurance, but like people talk about insurance and you sit there and think, I don't need insurance, until all of a sudden you die and then your family needs insurance. So we had an incident. I don't remember the first incident, but now I know that we negotiate title like in contracts. It's like, no, we want our title agent. Well, we don't have to. Okay, well, if you're going to use your title agent, we want this discount or something like that, because I know John, and when John, the rare time he's made mistake, he just goes and fixes it immediately. If you don't know the person, you don't have a rapport with them, they might just be like, okay, we'll get to it or something like that. I mean, what was it? Tell the story about Walton Hills, because that's a good one that really was incredible, because we hired a previous title agent. Go ahead, John.
Set it up a little bit more. Walton Hills is...
We bought a house in Walton Hills.
Single
to flip
unit?
It. Yeah, to flip it. We bought it, rehabbed it, bought it from a bank, rehabbed it. When we were selling it, good old John was our title agent.
Go ahead, John. Tell us what happened.
So we get the transaction, and the contract comes in. We open up an order. We do a full search, which title agents do. So a full search in our parlance is a 42 to 50-year search. So we do our search, and we realize that despite the fact that this property had been conveyed back and forth over the years from a variety of people, including it being sold to Crossroads, a rear parcel, which was half of the acreage of the parcel, and it was relatively substantial acreage, had not been conveyed properly for several transfers. So the property goes from A to B, B to C. So when A sold to B, they sold 2 parcels. When B sold to C, they did not sell the parcel. They only had 1 parcel on the deed.
The first owner still owned it? Yeah.
That's right. And so this went back to the 60s. And so this mistake was carried forward throughout the years. And so it gets even more fun. So over time, what happened was the deed transferred with only 1 legal description and 1 parcel number. And when these folks took out a mortgage as to Charter 1, only 1 parcel was collateralized. And so when the foreclosure happened, they only foreclosed on 1 parcel. So this other parcel is still owned by these people from way back when. So we get involved. I called Andrew. We got Paul on the phone. We talked about it. So
John caught this, and all these other companies did not catch this. The courts didn't catch this.
Listen, I know our deed transfer fans are squirming in their pants right now, but John, keep going. Tell me what happened.
So when Crossroads bought the property, they had an owner's policy of title insurance, which is great. And so they were covered up to the amount of the purchase price. Let's say it was $200,000. So that's all well and good. So they have a right to file a claim on their title insurance policy. And in dealing with insurance, as we all know, you don't just send them a letter and they stroke you a check. It's a process. It can take a while.
That's our next podcast, Johnny. Keep going.
Meanwhile, they have a buyer that is desirous of buying this property
Sure.
at a set price, and so they don't want to lose the deal. So if you file a title claim, it could take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 2 years. I mean, it could take a while because, like I said, they don't just cut you a check. So then the question is, how do we fix it? So we knew who the former owner or the title owner was, and so we tracked them down, and then
They're alive?
they were dead. Okay. So the husband I'm trying to think. So the husband and the wife were dead. A probate estate was opened, but they didn't transfer this property because they didn't think they owned it because they had already sold it. So we had to call that lawyer.
Oh my God.
And because it's Cleveland, of course, I knew the guy and had a very contentious case with him, but he was a nice enough guy. So we paid him like $800 to open up the estate and convey the property out of the parents' interest, out of the parents' name, do what's called a certificate of transfer through the probate court. And he was a nice guy, did it for us. So now these two kids owned it, okay? One of the kids is in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So when
This is a sitcom. Come on.
so when you're in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, the trustee stands in your shoes and has control of your assets. So now you have an asset coming in that has value that you own. So we had to go to the trustee. And so I'm a lawyer, and I'm also an associate with the firm called Reimer
I'm a
Law.
lawyer, Will Ferrell. I'm a lawyer. Damn it. Keep going. Keep going.
So, and I am a lawyer.
Yeah.
So,
Damn it.
So one of our attorneys that does bankruptcy law worked with the bankruptcy trustee, and we had to go through a whole thing where they abandoned the property, and it took a while. And because everybody,
All of this while you need to get a speedy transfer going?
Yes.
well, that's the goal. So it's like beat the clock. Is this lady going to bail? Is she going to find another property? So Andrew smoothed it out with her, explained everything. We spoke with her and spoke with her lender, told them that, we were on track to get this done. So ultimately, we get authority from the trustee for these people to sell. And it was, I remember, these things you remember, it was a Friday morning, and we had the go, we're ready to go. So we had the deeds all prepped. So I was like, I'm going to saddle up and go get this stuff signed because today is the day. It's got to get done. I don't want to mail them the deeds. I don't want to send a closer. I'm going to do it. So the people in the Chapter 13 bankruptcy lived in this really nice house in like North Olmsted or something. It's like it's like a $350,000 house.
Oh, that's interesting.
Of course. And the people that weren't, it was like one of the two kids was pretty sophisticated, living the high life in a bankruptcy. The other was probably had $1 million in the bank, salt to the earth. They were both very nice because they both cut the deed. They knew that they didn't have any interest. They could have tried to hold us up for money. It could have been a lot worse. So we were lucky in the sense that they were reasonable and willing to cooperate as long as we made it very easy for them to cooperate. So so ultimately we got the property conveyed to Crossroads Group. We kind of squared the circle, fixed it, and they were able to sell the property to this lady who in the meantime had moved in, which was the right thing to do for the Crossroads Group because that way
We just rented it to her.
Yeah. So it was a risk for them,
Yeah.
but that's how you keep the person in the deal is you make it easy for them to stay in the deal. So everybody basically cooperated. So it was a good story about that. And the deal got done. Now, we would do that for anyone at Nova Title. That's just how we get clients is we take care of things for people. We help people out, whether it's our deal or not. Many title agents would do that. Many would not because they wouldn't have the mental capacity. They
experience to deal with it.
Yeah, or just even the desire. It's like, why are we doing this stuff? I mean, one of my kids always says, "Dad, why are you doing that for free? You got to charge those people." I'm like, "Hey, this is how I get business."
Isn't that the state of life? I'm actually more surprised when someone's like overworking at work nowadays. I've even asked strangers. I'm like, "Why are you like working so hard?" I really want to know the mentality of someone. Well, like all of us that want to work really hard, but obviously there's like 90, what percentage really doesn't? But I'll be at the airport and be like, my God, you're so, like, why are you working so hard? Like, it's just, I don't know. I'm just amazed at like.
Well, John likes it a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, it's very gratifying to solve problems, and the people at Nova Title, and we have 20 some odd employees.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
They're totally committed to the customer experience. And it's funny, it's ironic because last night I was talking to one of our people, Rachel Rice, who's a licensed title agent, has been with us for 17 years, our longest tenured employee. And we were talking about how when people buy properties through something called the private selling officer, which is something I want to talk about just because it'll be might be interesting to your investor listeners. And we deal with this certain type of transaction. And the people that are buying these properties are investors, and they have a different experience at Nova than they have with other title agencies handling these types of files because it's similar to a bank-owned property. and they comment on it all the time. Like, no one has called us back from the other title agency. I've never talked to somebody there. I leave a voicemail and they send me an email or something like that. So we try to be as high touch as we can so that everybody knows what's going on in the transaction. Real estate deals are all about communication. If everybody knows what is happening, I learned practicing law. I did a lot of divorce work, and I learned that people can handle bad news. It's the not knowing that kills them. So you've got to always communicate.
And by the way, that's the reason I work with John a lot. He touched me a lot while we were working together. Right when we started, he touched me all over and all the time. He made sure those touches were very intense.
Consensual, I hope. You have an insane memory.
I do have a good memory. That is a true statement.
Have you heard about these people that can remember everything in their whole life?
Isn't that incredible?
So what happened April 10th? That has
yes,
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's her
Is it
name?
Mary
What
Lou
show?
Henny?
Yeah, that's
Taxi?
it. That's it.
With Judd Hirsch?
There was a 60-minute special,
Yeah.
and there's about a dozen of them, and she was on Howard Stern, that actress.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, the first time I was here was like 1981," and he's like,
I guarantee she remembered the date too. It wasn't even just 1981.
"What she had for breakfast?"
Exactly.
The subway trip over.
Yeah.
And they called her out. They said, "Up, we got you. You're wrong. It was that was a Wednesday." And she's like, "You better double check. It was a leap year. It was. She was right." Or something like that. I mean, that's the story. I listened to, I was like, yeah. So, but anyway, I don't have a memory quite like that. You know, like you're rattling off all this stuff. It's amazing. So
Literally, Seth will say something to me like last night, and then 3 minutes later, I'm like, "Hey, remember he said this?" Like, I have no idea. I just said that.
But
I
the
do
funny
same
part
thing.
is,
I do the
on
same thing.
on a wedding day, I can literally memorize like 50 names
That's
of people.
incredible.
I'll just forget them the next day. So, but what I'm learning now is I have to start telling myself I do have a good memory and convincing myself that I do. So
That's right.
I have an amazing memory just like you, John. Tell me about this private, you said private selling officer. What is this?
So
for our real estate clients.
Ohio passed a law that took effect in September of 2016 that allowed...
Can you guys cough more?
I can try.
You guys are both like
In unison. Well, we have to start podcast bright and early, Paul. So
So 2016.
go ahead, John.
So the state passed a law that allowed a bank or anyone that's filing a foreclosure action to sell the property through something called a private selling officer. So you go through the legal aspect of your case, you get your judgment, and then you file a motion to authorize a private selling officer or PSO to conduct the sale of the property.
Who is this guy? What's the story? What is this?
Well, his is a
I'll-
female.
I'll tell you, Seth. So, under Ohio Revised Code Section
hosting the show?
2329.152, et sec, a private selling officer is a resident of the state of Ohio, a licensed realtor, and a licensed auctioneer, which isn't that easy to do all those three things because...
John, I've always wanted to be an auctioneer. That's a whole podcast in itself. Go on.
Well,
I'm sorry.
there's a 12-month apprenticeship, just so you know.
It's a YouTube video.
So anyway, so basically, in the whole idea is to do online sales of properties instead of a sheriff's sales. So think about it.
Go back. The caveat is you have to be a lawyer.
No. A resident of the state of Ohio,
Got
a
it.
licensed real estate agent, and a licensed auctioneer.
Remember my memory, how great it was? Yeah. Okay, that's just keep going. So they want to sell this stuff online.
So
of course they do.
the concept is so if you want to buy a property in Cuyahoga County from the sheriff, you have to go Monday morning to the Justice Center and stand there and wait till it comes up. Through a private selling officer, there's an online auction that has to be at least 7 days, and it's just like buying anything else online. You log in, you register, you put your bid in, you can up your bid.
Like an eBay type thing.
Yep.
Whoa. What is this city thing called? I've done this, Paul.
Have you?
Yeah, with Daniel, I went down to the city.
Oh,
and
the sheriff's sale.
Sheriff said we should talk about those, but anyway. Write that down.
Make note.
So I didn't know they're shifting this.
They are. And so
Are you a PSO?
I am not a PSO, but I work with them all the time. And so what's ending up happening is a lot of the large money center banks are using private selling officers to conduct auctions of their properties, and the hope is that they're going to sell them more efficiently for a higher price.
That's why I don't like them.
You've got a wider pool
Yep.
of potential buyers.
What don't you like about this, Paul?
Now it's going to make it easier for people to bid. Therefore, the person who's willing to do the work to go downtown and wait in the misery of the Justice Center, who is willing to go pay that, there'll be less people there, more likely to get a good price. But now it's online. I can do it in my pajamas. And as Bill Burr said,
From any location.
Any job you do in your pajamas is an easy job. You just start clicking. That's it.
Well, we knew this was coming, right? Online, huh?
For sure. So that's why guys like me go, that sucks. Now I got to go find another way to have a better advantage over somebody else who's just going to sit at home in their house and start clicking buttons.
So how is this impacting your...
So it's been good for us because we're getting one of the things that we do. So we do work with a lot of investors that are buying single family residences or SFRs around the state. And these people are local and they're national and international. So we're expanding our base of those clients because we're getting in touch with people who are buying through a private selling officer. So the private selling officer is required to have a title agent to handle all the funds in the transaction because the sheriff has no involvement. So when you buy a property as a third-party purchaser, we call it, as from a private selling officer, you get an email from the auctioneer that says, please send your earnest money to Nova Title within 24 hours. And then they're required to do that. And the earnest money is, it stair stuffs up. It's like $2,000, $5,000, or $10,000, depending on the value of the property. And then we do a closing. So in a private selling officer sale, just like in a sheriff's sale, you are, as a buyer, you are now part of a court process. And a lot of weird things and odd things can happen in a court process, but as a general rule, you become the purchaser. That sale is confirmed at some point, usually within about 30 to 45 days of the auction. And once the confirmation entry of sale is filed, then the person that owned the property before, their equity of redemption is terminated. So they can no longer, if their grandma dies and gives them money, they can't pay off the bank. They have no rights to the property anymore.
I'm just nodding my head at this point, John.
So it's a little technical, but the thing to understand is if you buy a property from a sheriff or a PSO, you're part of a court process. So it's good, bad, and indifferent. A lot of weird things can happen. You're not buying a property from the Smiths. You don't have the same level of control.
I see.
Odd things can happen. People can file bankruptcy. The lawyer can make a mistake, and it can delay. So we let people know, look, you're in a court process. There's a lawyer involved. You can get your own lawyer. Most people don't. And, the process plays itself out. So ultimately, we do a settlement statement. We tell the third-party purchaser, this is how much money you have to bring in. We bring the money into our coffers. We get the deed. The private selling officer can sign the deed, so there's no waiting for a deed from a sheriff anymore. And then we record the deed. We disperse all the money per the confirmation entry, and then we issue, if they request, we issue the owner's policy of title insurance.
Can you work? I'm sure you do. Do you do titles just in Ohio, or you do all over?
We just are in Ohio.
Okay, and so you're just only working with PSOs in Ohio.
That's right. And to my knowledge, the private selling officer law is solely in Ohio. Other states might have something similar, but that law is specific to Ohio.
This is interesting. So,
Fuck online options.
how long have you guys known each other? I mean, how long has this been?
10, 12 years. He thinks 12 years. We can look back, but I think it's more like 10 or 11 years.
What do you love about the podcast, and what do you love about Paul? Because I
don't need to hear
I
what
love
you love
this
about
guy.
me.
I love everything he has to say. Well, unless we're
everything.
arguing, but tell me, John.
So
Why are you drawn to him?
I mean,
Please don't say this.
Paul's very blunt, and he's very funny.
Women love that, by the way. Like most of the wives of Friends, they love you, Paul, when you just bring up abortion topics and politics. Keep going, John.
First off, sorry to interrupt, John. Is this a true statement? Do I have to worry about some wife I've offended?
Probably. You know that, damn it. Keep going, John.
Oh, no.
Definitely Tim's wife, I'm
Oh,
sure.
100%. But I do that on purpose to rattle Laura.
Keep going.
They value the relationship, and so as is often the case with at Nova Title, somebody comes in as a client, they end up being a friend, and then it's like you're dealing with your friends all day.
Yeah.
So it's actually pretty fun. Just like, and what I love about the podcast is I feel like I'm sitting at the table with you guys, just bullshitting away the day, whether it's deal of the week or you're talking about value investing, or you're talking about your little kids and their list.
Deal of the week. Andrew brings Paul a deal of the week.
Yeah, that's the deal.
That's there too.
Anyway, keep going, John.
So, and what I think is funny, like one of the things that cracks me up about the podcast is when Paul will say, he'll go through this whole thing about what people do, and then he'll say, like you were talking about, you were on a panel at some event.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, and if they disagree with me, fuck those guys. And then the other day, there's another little snippet
Go
that
on.
just totally cracked me up. You said this is, and Paul said, the story of a girl. Like,
You love this?
where did that come from?
I do that naturally on a daily basis anyhow. It's funny when people say like Andrew and I with things. Sometime there was a deal that happened, and somebody asked like, "Oh, is it a gas or electric heat?" And Andrew said, "It's electric." I go, dun, dun, dun,
Yeah, of
dun,
course.
dun, dun. I mean, that's just what you do.
Don't you think? Okay, so you're a smidge older than us. I assume that like the idea of like media, YouTube, being able to like, I still explain to my children that like when I wanted to watch a show when I was a kid, it was on once and that was it. If you missed it, life's over. But like it's gotten really cool. Maybe this started with Family Guy like 20 years ago. Is like bringing up like cool old. Did this happen in your life? Like, like because we did that Full House trailer a couple weeks ago, but like I think
You saw that.
I did. My wife actually saw it first, and she said, if you're having a bad day, go to Paul's Instagram. It's hilarious. And I looked at it, and the funny thing was, I've been to that property.
Have you really?
That was
Ludlow
the
Gables?
Lomond. Yeah, was it Lomond? and
No,
South
it's not.
Woodland?
No,
Oh, it's not?
No, it's South Woodland and Ludlow.
Yeah, no, I was there.
Why'd you say Lomond?
I
Lomond
made a
south of.
mistake.
Okay, gotcha.
I asked somebody about Ludlow Gables. I asked him he says I've never heard it called Ludlow Gables. A person who stayed there was walking out, and I was like, "Is this?" And it's like,
So when we first looked at it 7, 8 years ago, it was called Ludlow Gables. I don't know what the owner before us changed it to or made it. What were you doing there?
So I went there because this is a good segue. I don't live far. I live like 2 miles away, and so we did the title report and everything, and
you did the title for
Yeah.
Of course you did.
Of course you
Keep
did.
going.
and we got, we were putting everything together, and something didn't fit. Okay, and what didn't fit was, and I'll have it a little bit wrong. There were 3 buildings
Yes.
that were being prorated. Okay, and we needed to get a zoning letter from the city of Cleveland, and this lady from the city of Cleveland couldn't have been nicer.
Oh, really?
Oh, she was fantastic.
Did you get her
man.
number and be like, listen, I'm only going to call you?
I absolutely did.
Oh, good
because
for
whenever
you.
you find that wonderful
Gem.
person in
Yeah.
any municipal government thing, you keep that number forever because they're your one.
Go-to.
So I did keep all that. So something wasn't adding up, and the thing is that on like it's kind of like a corner, and
Yeah.
so there was one on Ludlow that was, but the address was 13409 South Woodland, but there were 2 buildings on one property,
Okay.
on one parcel. And the reason that was important is we got a letter from the city saying that, this is how many people, the zoning letter said it listed both of those physical structures on the one parcel, but the water and sewer bill, we were asking for the water and sewer for one address, but not the other address. And so I realized we needed to get the water and sewer for the other building on that, or because, when one of the things we do in title is we make sure that the water and sewer and special assessments are resolved. And in the city of Cleveland, that's important because they might have a board up fee or a grass cutting fee from 2014 that that's not been paid yet. And so somebody like Paul buys, or your listeners buy the property and they get an $800 bill for, $10 worth of grass cutting, and you're fighting City Hall literally. So we try to deal with those things up front and pay them from the seller as part of the closing. That's just part of what we do. So anyway, we were looking at this thing and something didn't match. So I said, there's this other building, and I went there and drove around. So I wanted to check it out and see how it all fit together, because you can only get so much from Google Maps and stuff like that. So it was just easier to go there and drive around.
Yeah, they're connected like in the middle underneath.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. So if there's a flat roof kind of betwixt and between these 3 buildings.
That's a strange setup, right?
And then there's an underground
Yeah.
garage that basically comes
Creepy
in.
underground garage.
And then there's like 8 couches. So if anybody needs a couch, go down
Go to
there.
Ludlow
You can
Gables.
And
definitely
if you want to get in a
pick one
fight,
up.
just talk to one of the tenants who I almost got in a fight with, but go ahead.
Yeah, so
Almost. That was a fight. Let me cut you off, John. So I'm not gonna tell the whole story, but in the future here, folks, we did a whole new a full shoot at Ludlow Gables. We're gonna present to you guys. Tim, is this exclusive content? Yes, or this is gonna be public content?
Probably
We'll have to
public.
decide. Public, you think? If you like and subscribe, you'll be able to see it. But I'm kidding, or maybe. But anyway, we're gonna go to Ludlow Gables. We already went. We filmed top to bottom. Paul and Andrew describing why they bought it, what they bought it for. We're gonna completely rehab, putting in like $400K into this property,
Yeah,
Paul.
a lot.
So it's gonna be insane, and that's gonna be sort of a 3-part special we put on.
And I want to explain the fight I got into once John is done, because I want to give my side of the story on how it all went down.
Keep going, John. Sorry. We may not have time. We need to have John on for a second podcast here to describe fights in Ludlow Gables. But
So the last thing I want to say, that the reason I like the podcast and it's really fun to me, is the little weird things Paul says that are wrong.
Like what?
My God!
So, like,
Listen, let me silence his mic real quick. Paul, go ahead and try and talk. Great, go ahead, John. Let's hear what he. I love this.
So he'll say that this investor bought the property and they leveraged it to the tilt. It's to the hilt.
Oh!
Oh my God!
You know what's funny? Did you remember the Wungate? Have you gotten to the Wungate part yet?
Oh yeah, that was early on.
Yeah, that was really early on. I thought it's hilt.
You would have winged
Can I
it.
make it? See, I still think it's wung it. You swing, you swung. By the way, can I tell you another thing? I thought it was tilt because you go on full tilt in like poker and things like that.
There is a thing called full tilt, but that's different to leveraging something to the hilt. Or to
Thank
the
you very
top.
much, John. Thank you very much,
That's
John.
just one.
Let's hear the other ones.
The other one that you say all the time that cracks me up is
He's got a list.
Yes.
at the same token. It's
Did I
by
say-
the same token. Did you notice this, Seth?
Did I say that?
Dude, you say it all the
Do I
time.
really?
At the same token.
You do.
Do I? I think I say. Okay, go ahead.
Listen,
And the only other one
Yeah.
is, and this was you, as you said it, you know, I was
I
like,
wung it.
I wish I could have called in because you said,
John,
I have
call
another
it-
quiver in my satchel or arrow in
Oh,
my
okay.
satchel. It's arrow in
My
the quiver.
Yes, I do know that one. I was like, when I said it, I was like, that's just completely botched.
But you said that.
I know,
You owned it.
100%.
quiver in my satchel. I remember that one.
And I did say that. I did say whatever it is or something like that.
You had all the three correct words. You just didn't
Yes,
say
I did the
arrow
order.
in the quiver,
Yeah.
which a quiver is kind of like a satchel, but it's a
Oh
quiver
my
because you're
God.
an archer. So
Okay, so that was, yes, correct.
Listen, folks, stay tuned. Paul is stoked, and so am I, because I think in the very near future we're going to be live. Tim, I didn't tell you. We're
Oh,
going
he
to be-
doesn't know this.
We are going to be live
With these new
streaming-
cameras, we can do live video.
streaming our podcast.
Yeah.
And so when John says I'd love to call in and bust Paul up, we can take phone calls. We're serious shit here, folks. Okay, this is no joke.
You can call live and say, Paul, you just
Paul,
said.
you suck.
Paul, you said wung it. It's still wung it in my book.
There's something very satisfying about a person who's so perfect getting like.
First off, I never say I'm perfect ever. Ever.
It's just nice to see.
Have I ever said I was
Thank
perfect?
you, John, for that.
You're welcome.
Have I ever said I was perfect?
No,
Look at the line in this guy's hair. Can
That's
somebody,
perfect.
can everybody get on YouTube?
No, you don't say you're perfect, but I would say we're doing this because like I'm not even kidding. Like I strive to think about life more like you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Get off that mic, you crazy.
What were you going to say? You
Like for example, you talked to me about how you love this new lean program you're into about cleanliness, and so I've been taking it to heart.
And
Now,
I came down here today, and the studio was.
immaculate. But here's the key: is Tim and I are still kind. I think we both share this mindset of like, Dad's coming. Let's make sure. But I want to move. So I want to start integrating these. I'm doing this for me. But enough about me. John Dyer of novatitleagency.com. You know, I'm gonna be doing some deals here in the future. I'm excited to work with you.
Thank
You got to work with John.
Absolutely. And Nova Title is on Twitter at novatitleagency.com.
That's not the Twitter.
That's what he just told me.
Oh, it's at Nova Title Agency, not .com.
Oh, thank you. I always say .com. Thank you, Paul.
.com.
At Nova Title Agency. John, tell us, what are the 3 takeaways you'd like customers to know why they should go to you?
So if you are not sure about what's going on a piece of property, if you have any questions about it, we'll be glad to take a look at it and research it a little bit for you and kind of see what's going on. If you're not sure how deals typically fit together in terms of pricing and who pays what, we can help you with that. If you're looking for a partnership and somebody that you can count on going forward to have your best interest at heart and to tell you exactly what's going on in a deal and to use a lot of elbow grease and intellect to fix the problems, or to tell you, hey, this is a no-go, you can't do this, then you should use Nova Title. And you should always, if you're buying a property through a bank-owned, sheriff's sale, PSO sale, whatever it is, be an educated consumer. Take a look at the title commitment. So we joke at Nova Title that nobody reads the title commitment. It's the dirty little secret of the title business. So when you buy a property, the contract comes into the title agent. The title agent does a full search. We create what's called the title commitment, which is basically a history report. And so Seth, you're going to buy a house in Columbus, right? So you might get that, and this happened to a friend of mine who bought a house in Columbus. She bought the house. There was a restriction that was listed on the title. She didn't read it. She didn't ask for it.
I don't
It just
read
was
shit.
in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So it said that you can't have a shed in your backyard. So 6 weeks later, she
Puts it up?
gets a shed delivered. She and her husband, put it on whatever they had. Like, it wasn't really a foundation, but it was definitely a backyard shed. And immediately, neighbor comes over. You can't have a shed. That's prohibited. This and
Welcome
that.
to the neighborhood.
She was super pissed and bummed out. And like, why wasn't I told this? I mean, I had a high school buddy who bought a property. He asked the realtor, "Are you sure there's no HOA?" "Yes, Mr. Jones, there's no HOA." Of course, there was an HOA. He was super upset because he didn't want to be subject to any rules or regulations.
Sure, and the fees.
And it was all in there in the documents, but he just didn't look at it. He didn't read it. So I wouldn't expect you to know that unless you were savvy. So people need to know what they're doing. If you're buying a $100,000 house or $400,000 house, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Understand what you're doing.
Well, and not only that, the thing I want to jump into is, I'm not trying to diminish a $200,000 purchase, but for the investors out there who are eventually going to buy a $2 million or a $20 million purchase, magnify that a little bit more. Imagine if we had part of our property didn't belong to us. It belonged to a guy who owned it 50 years ago that is now dead, and it was a $20 million purchase. We'd be shitting ourselves right now going, holy F. And then would the kids be as likely to be like, you know what, give me $100,000, I'll walk away? It's like, what do? You know what I mean? Do you sit there and lose the deal for $100,000? Or do you sit there and say, no, we're going to fight this thing? I mean, how do you handle it? So it's all the more reason why I value John more on the bigger scale stuff, especially because it's like, man, we're buying a $20 million property or $10 million, whatever it is. Yeah, those title fees get there, but at the same point, you're going to have them anyhow. You might as well use somebody you like and trust who knows is going to go to bat for you.
John, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
We absolutely have to have you back in a few episodes. This wealth of knowledge is good to know. I've learned a lot today. I hope our listeners have.
And he's going to pay us our money for endorsing him today.
Join us, as always, on Mondays and Thursdays. We do two podcasts a week. And, we love the following. John, I can't thank you enough for being a fan. And, Novo Title Agency, folks. Go there. Go to learnfromus.com to learn all about all the goodness. I'm playing music. This is our... See this? I don't even know if I'm allowed to play this. Facebook, please don't cut this podcast.
I think it's 30 seconds you're allowed.
Okay, I'm going to cut it at 28. John, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.